Hey everyone, it's a 4-Gun Guy, and today I'm mounting my Vortex Razor Gen 3 to my centerfire competition rifle. So I thought I'm going to do a video on how I mount a scope. Now, some of you, there's going to be a lot of comments going, oh, you didn't use the wall method with the plumb bob and the... No, I'm just going to show you a very simple method. You can or don't have to follow it if you don't want to. It's going to use some very simple tools. I'm going to use the Wheeler scope mounting kit to do this, and I'll show you how that all works. But the reason I like doing it this way, to be really honest with you, is there's been times out in the field where I've had to take a scope off, mount another scope on the rifle, and I just feel better with this process. So I thought I'd show this one to you today. So if you're ready to go, let's get to it. Well, I'm going to mount the Razor Gen 3 to this rifle, and as I said earlier, I'm going to use the Wheeler mounting kit, scope mount kit, and I'm actually using, I'm just a spur mount guy, so I'm going to use a spur mount. This is I think this is a 600 or a 4002C, which is actually a higher mount. This is a 1.5 inch height scope mount. I used to go with the lowest scope mount I could find, but here's why I've changed to the higher scope mount. I was at a match probably a year ago. One of the guys said, man, when you get on your rifle, you are like this. And I thought, yeah, it's not really that comfortable. And I think it was a lot of my cheek rest was wrong, my cheek placement and all that stuff. But I really just thought, I just want to get higher. I want to get straighter, right? More upright behind the scope. And you can do that with a lower height scope mount if you bring your cheek rest all the way down. But then to me, some things just started to get kind of off. My shoulder was dropping then, my elbow was out of whack, so it just didn't feel comfortable to me. So I wanted the same cheek weld that I was using. I just wanted that scope higher, so I've gone to a higher scope mount. That's just me. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start by making sure, so if you use the Wheeler scope leveling kit, if you've ever seen this used, it's like a multi-step process. So the first step is I need to make sure that the action, this rail up here, is level. So that's going to be the first thing I'm going to do. Once I get this level, then I use the level on the barrel and make sure that that is level with this level. And now everything here is level. So I can take this off of the rail now, and then I can mount the scope or mount the mount, put the scope in the mount, and then make sure that the scope is level with this level that is matching up to the level on the barrel. So we never really take that level off the barrel once it's set. Again, you have to have kind of a right scope to be able to do this with. The spur mount comes with this wedge. If you're familiar with spur mounts, that once you mount the mount onto the rail, I can use this wedge that then starts to really level, make this scope parallel with this rail. And then I can leave that in there as I start tightening down the rings. So I just wanted to kind of go over the process with you first, and then let's go ahead and get into it. And I'll just kind of go step by step, try to be kind of quick with it, and then we'll see how it ends up. Okay, so step number one is I want to make sure that this level, and it's magnetic by the way, that this level, when I put it on this rail, is level. Now the beautiful thing about this action, this is an impact precision action, it has the rail built into the action. So there's, I'm not sitting here going, gee, I hope this rail is screwed on there properly and it's parallel with the action itself. And I don't really need to worry about that on this one. So if I look at this, I'm just going to make some small adjustments here, right there. So it looks like we are level, a little bit more. I think I overdid it there. That's level, okay? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to the level on the barrel. Okay, so now that we've got the rifle level, I've put this on the barrel, and now it's still loose. So all I have to do is kind of adjust it roughly. Then I'm going to tighten this down. Then this upper adjustment knob here, I just tighten or loosen depending on which way I want that bubble to go. And now a little bit less over here. And now this is level right there. So I look at both the bubbles. Both bubbles are level, which means that this rail is level with this level. Now I can take the level off of the rail, and this now is truing the level of the entire action in the vise. Okay, now I've roughly mounted the spur mount. And I say roughly because really all I'm doing here is this. I've got 2 of the screws on this, wrong way, and I'm just going to bring those right here. I'm not worried about the placement just yet, okay? I'm not torquing, I'm not anything. I'm leaving these other 2 screws out. The reason I'm doing this, guys, is because it's time to now get my eye relief right for the scope, because I can tell you the first time or 2 I mounted scopes, yeah, I didn't get the eye relief right. And so I mounted this whole thing up, and then I found that the eye relief was wrong, and where the scope was sitting in the mount was too far forward or too far back. The mount was too far forward or too far back. I'm going to, I'm not going to show you all this. I'm going to loosely put the scope in the mount right here, okay, with 2 screws in each one of these sections, loosely. Then I'll get behind the scope, see how the eye relief is, see if I need to move it forward or backward. Then I'll come back and start to tighten everything down and make sure the scope is level. So let me do that and I'll be back. All right, well, luckily, when I went outside, everything looked great. So my eye relief is perfect, really like where I ended up. Now the other thing that I want to make sure, and you want to make sure of, is that all of your little accessories are going to still fit on this scope. So with that said, I've got a magnifier because my eyes are bad. I need a magnifier to see the turret. So I went ahead and put this on there. This is from MKM Machining, and it fits fine. Then I took the mount for my Send It on the other side here, put that on there to make sure it wasn't, you know, the scope wasn't getting in the way of the mount, or it wasn't getting in the way of the scope and my adjustment. So everything there looks great. So now what I want to do is make sure that this is level up here, because my barrel level is level. This is level. So now everything seems to be fine. Now here comes the tricky part. And this is really with the spur mounts, to be really honest with you. I'm going to mount the screws first, just using this screwdriver. I don't turn these until they stop. I just start them. And then what I'm going to do is I will tighten 2 of them down. So it'll probably be the middle 2 on this front scope ring. And then I'll pull the rest out, to be honest with you, and I'll put blue Loctite on them. So I do blue Loctite my scope screws, but I just want to make sure everything's going to fit in there first, so I don't get blue Loctite on things. You never know when you might have a stripped screw or something like that. Now the next thing is I've got to tighten down the mount to the rail. If I'm not mistaken, that the torque for these is, and I just did a review, guys, I just did a review on a $400 scope. And I got to tell you, one of the things I loved about that is on their rings, on the mount, they had in white letters and numbers the torque values. So if you looked right here, it would say like 45 inch-pounds, and up here it said 25 inch-pounds. So I never had to do this. I never had to look this up, go out on a website. Gosh, I wish all of them would do that. So with that said, I'm going to just tighten these in a little bit because we have one more thing to do here. And if you've mounted a lot of scopes, you know what that is, right? I'm going to back that off a little bit. I'm going to back this off, and I'm going to back this one off. I'm using Fix-It sticks, by the way. These are great. I love them. What we need to do is make sure that, see this little bit of play here? Kind of moving forward and backwards. Where do we want this to be? Back all the way or forward all the way? We want it to be forward all the way. You want this mount to be forward on the rail, because when you fire this rifle, the recoil will naturally want to send whatever's on this thing, it'll want to send the rifle back and your scope forward. So if you were to mount this with the scope back, you're putting undue pressure and torque, well, not torque, but pressure on this mount to move forward. So always move it forward, and then we're going to just come in here. I'm not even tightening them, just turning them until they stop. That's what we're doing. There we go. Right? So that's what I've done there. Now, I'm going to remove every one of those and put some blue Loctite on it. Then I'm going to tighten up the scope rings with blue Loctite as well. So let me do all that. I won't bore you with all that or put this in fast motion or any of that stuff. Let me do all that and then we'll come back. You know, as I started to tighten this up, I did want to address one thing, especially with spur mounts. I've read articles and whatnot that say this bar in the older models was prone to cracking when you torqued it down. I never had one crack. I've had like 6 of the old model of spur mounts, never had them crack, torqued them to the correct torque, which is 45 inch-pounds. But I'll tell you how I torque. So these are just kind of barely tightened on there. And you go in the number that they have them marked. So this is number 1. Number 1, if I'm doing 45 inch-pounds, I'm taking this to 25. Then I'm taking number 2, if I can get that in there. I'm taking number 2 to 25. Then I'm taking number 3 to 25, and you get the idea. Then I'll go to 35 on each of them, and then I will end up at the recommended torque of 45 inch-pounds. But I have a feeling what a lot of people do is they get a torque tool, they set it for 45 inch-pounds, and then they just ram that thing around there, and they wonder why stuff breaks on them. I think you have to give things time to get, I don't know, used to the tension and the pressure that you're exerting on them. That's just my thought. And so like right now, there's 45 on 1, there's 45 on 2, 45 on 3, and 45 on 4. Now, with that being said, once I'm done with this, I'm going to double check that the barrel's still level. It is. The scope is still level. It is not. It's a little off. So I'm going to just rotate it just a pinch in here until it becomes level. And then, like I said, I'm going to change out my head here. What I do is take, as I said, these first 2 screws. The other thing is you want to make sure that you leave the proper gap on either side of these rings as you tighten them down. So the point here is you'll see a gap on this side of the ring and on this side of the ring, and you want to make sure that those are even as you tighten things down. I don't want this to be sandwiched together and then there's a big gap up here on this side. Now I'm checking it's still level. I'm going to take out the rest of these screws, as I said, put blue Loctite on them, put them in, not torque them down, but just put them in. Then I'll remove these 2 screws, put blue Loctite on them, and then I'll torque everything down. So let me do that, then we'll be back. Well, there we have it. The Razor Gen 3 is mounted on my Impact Precision Action. This is my competition rifle. It's a 6mm BRA. So we got the mount. We went ahead and put the Send It scope level on there. And I like it facing down. It doesn't get in the way of anything up here. So I can look at my parallax if I need to. It just doesn't interfere with anything. And when I'm behind the scope, I can look down. I'm not having to look up, which just feels better to me. And then I went ahead and put the scope magnifier on there. So everything fits, everything works great, good eye relief. And the whole thing took maybe 20 minutes if I wasn't filming and everything. So look, I hope you enjoyed this one. Try to keep it short, and we'll do some more videos like this. I think the next video I'm going to do is let's go out and zero the scope. So we'll see maybe how some easy ways of doing that are to at least get us on paper quickly when we get out there. So hey everyone, thanks again for watching. Have a lot of new stuff coming up. Please stay tuned. I appreciate the subscriptions, likes, and comments. And until next time, shoot straight.